Ireland's Grand Slam bid was dramatically derailed in Twickenham on Saturday evening as England achieved a landmark win under Steve Borthwick. However, there is still all to play for this coming weekend as Ireland can secure back-to-back Six Nations titles with a win over Scotland at the Aviva Stadium. So we have plenty to discuss on tonight's episode of the Left Wing podcast. Will Slattery here with you. I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Cian Tracey and Luke Fitzgerald. But before we get to tonight's discussion, just to let you know, we are running a short survey to get some feedback on the podcast. If you go to www.mypodcastfeedback.com and enter the code WING, W-I-N-G, and fill out that short survey, you can be in with a chance of winning a €500 one for all voucher. But turning to the weekend, Cian, I know you were over in Twickenham. We were just discussing off air, leaving Ireland's disappointment aside, it was a great Six Nations occasion, an amazing game to be at, I'm sure. Watching it, in a pub, admittedly, was good crack. I think Luke was in a similar spot to myself. But, ultimately, why do you think Ireland lost? It was an England performance that 2 weeks ago would have been unfathomable to think that they were playing as good as they did on Saturday. But why do you think Ireland came unstuck ultimately?
Well, you touched on it there in your intro, Will. I think England hit heights that they haven't hit for a very long time. I know some people have said maybe even since the 2019 World Cup. And that's probably fair, really. It was a statement victory under Steve Borthwick. It was the weekend where the Six Nations really came alive when you look at what happened in the other games as well. But obviously that's no good to Ireland. And they fell short. And I have to say, Self and Road obviously did a pod afterwards. And my initial feeling hasn't really changed, that it was quite similar to the World Cup quarter-final defeat, in that a team who Ireland were expected to beat delivered an emotional pitch and a physical pitch that Ireland just weren't able to match. And to me, that's very, very disappointing for where we think this team are. I was out at the press conference today talking to Simon Easterby, Tadhg Byrne, Ian Henderson, and the messages were all still pretty clear. Like, apparently the review on Monday was a pretty ugly affair, and Tadhg Byrne was saying that it was genuinely difficult to watch back the mistakes that Ireland had made, how far off the pace they were, particularly I think in the contact area. And that's where I think the game was won and lost. Ireland were so passive in defence. When they look back, like, we've praised on this podcast, haven't we, so often how good Ireland's defence has been, but the manner in which it was opened up was just... Sorry, I have. Ireland's defence has generally been pretty good. You look at the stats would back that up over the last couple of years, but it was so poor. I thought England deserve a lot of credit, don't get me wrong, they were fully deserving of their win, but how easily they were able to cut open Ireland's defence from similar enough issues. I'm sure we can get into it. I thought the kicking strategy was wrong throughout the game. I was surprised that they didn't adjust it, particularly when England had picked a back three, that it was blatantly obvious. I know we haven't seen a lot of it under Steve Borthwick, but when you pick those three guys, they were always going to counter-attack back. So to me, it felt like the kicking game was designed with, Freddie Stewart, Elliot Daly in mind, who maybe aren't as fast and as sharp on the counter-attack as the likes of Furbank, Freeman and Emmanuel Fayabo. So I thought that was really disappointing as well, that Ireland didn't adapt to that. So so many different elements of it, Will, and obviously still Ireland only came up 1 point short, but you'd have to say it did feel like a lot more.
Yeah, what's your view on it? What from what Cian said, or your own thoughts? Like, how much of the defeat is Ireland not hitting the heights they traditionally do, and how much of it was England producing? As Cian said, I think it's definitely their best performance in at least 4 years, maybe going back to 2020 or potentially the 2019 semi-final.
I'd say probably a combination of both, if you ask me. I know that's not the answer you want to hear, probably, but I thought Ireland, I completely agree with Cian in terms of lots of the traits that we saw from, say, that New Zealand game. I thought we were kind of certainly not at our best at ruck time. Now I thought they got away with a bit, but the home team gets away with a bit. That's just the way things go. And I think that we were just a little bit off physically. I thought technique-wise, body positions, things like that, when the game's not going your way and when the other team are really on it, that's when those things kind of get, I think there's a bigger focus on them. And I noticed those things were off. I thought we got a little bit unlucky too. Nash going down injured, and then they what I would say is there was a bit of those things going on, a bit of luck in that. but also we did compound errors. It's a thing that I really noticed with Ireland. Like when there was a line break and they didn't defend well all day, I thought they were very, very passive, in my opinion, and led England away with a lot, particularly off line out. But I think they kind of compounded an initial error a lot. So Nash goes down injured. But I felt like they were completely muddled then. There was three guys doing three different things on that short side for the first try. Doris gets fished out of the line very, very easily to try and come at the 9. Don't have as big an issue with that. There's still three guys outside. But Gibson Park, and I'm not sure who's outside and make a complete mess of it on the outside. Gibson Park looks well on to catch that runner. I think it might be Robbie Henshaw steps in on, and all of a sudden they're away. It's a 2-on-1. There's no fixing it from there. But like three different guys doing three different things from the middle of the pitch. And you know,
the kick chase was really poor as well.
Yeah, it was poor, but I thought it was poor all day. Like I thought that was a really. I'm glad you made the point. I was hoping to make it myself. I think the thing with Lowe, they've fallen in love with going back to Lowe behind the goal line. That's a really pressurised kick when it's the only option you're taking. And I think you have to. If I was using that option, and it has to be a live option for the team, it's an absolute cannon of a boot. It's like a 2 in 6 or, you know, a 2 in 8 type of kind of kick that you employ, you know, because you're going back 10 metres. So all of a sudden your kick chase has to start from 10 metres further on. If he has a slight off day or they put good pressure on, which I thought England did really, really well all day, you're on the back foot, and that played perfectly into the hands of that back three. They had another 10 metres where the chasers had to kind of make up. So we were under pressure there all day, and he didn't have a great day with the boot, I didn't think. I thought it was England, you know, again, as I said, a bit of both. England were very good, but Ireland weren't at their best. I still think that, you know, yes, ruck, but I thought set piece was an issue. I think I saw Andy Dunn throw out a stat that Ireland won 11 out of 14 of their lineouts or something like that. It didn't feel that way to me.
It's the quality of the ball.
It's the quality. It looked clunky. It looked like it was messy. I thought they missed kind of crucial ones at crucial times at lineout. So that's an area where I thought they'd kind of resolved that. But Wales exposed it a bit, and I think England exposed it. It looked like they read it really well, Will. And then again, at key times, the scrum. You know, there was penalties given away at times. You're saying really could have done with keeping the ball there. So all the areas that we talked about, the kick 12 too, they were the three areas I picked last week that I thought England would probably attack. If they did okay, the game would be tight. And the last thing we probably should mention is the defence. Their defence was effective against Ireland for most of the game. There was times Ireland picked it apart, but a combination of slowing up the ruck ball slightly and that pressure that Felix Jones's defence kind of put on the Ireland ball handlers, I thought that was really, really effective against Ireland, and they didn't really react very well to that. I thought they took some bad options and they were a little bit sloppy at times. So I thought it would be a one-score game last week. I thought Ireland did very, very well to be ahead at that point of the game. I didn't think they deserved it. I thought
at half time to be 12-8 up.
Before missed a lot of kicks as well, though.
Yeah,
you know, that really didn't
one
help.
in front of the post, and he missed a couple of conversions because you know I was watching the game back again before we.
Those things deflate you a lot, you know.
But like Ireland were 12-8 up, especially after the first 25 minutes. England were rampant. They got Van der Fleer got a turnover penalty near the line. Byrne obviously got one that was, I thought, pretty fortunate to be called out because I thought that was clearly in the side. I don't think that was out, but look, the referee gave it. So Ireland were taking on water. So to get in at 12-8 and then to score a try at the start of the second half, like you think now is the time to kick on. Maybe use the bench.
Did you think he missed the window for the bench?
I 100% thought he brought the bench on
at 55 minutes in the pub. I was there with two pals, and I was saying he should bring them. He should unload the bench here. Like nothing was really working that well either. Like Kelleher that's a great 1-2 punch to have.
Having 6 forwards,
and he threw very well when he came on. I thought Kelleher,
saving them until 61 minutes when you have a man in the bin at that stage and you're
no,
behind.
but they made the break. So I was calling for it on 55 minutes. There was a lull in play where he could have put on those. Like there's no point in having a 6-2 bench if you're not going to attack with it. That's the whole point of it. If you're being conservative with your bench, you pick the 5-3. The 6-2 with the power that was coming off the bench there with Henderson, Conan, and Baird there, like and Kelleher for my mind, just they're real dynamic players. Ireland looked like they needed that. They literally made a break off that line out just after. I think it was on 50. Was it 59 minutes? I think it was.
Yeah, that led to the yellow
shocking
card.
defence, and then that was again compounding an error. I thought Pete looked like he panicked completely there. It's still on the 22. They had a chance to recover. There were still Irish numbers there. That was a bad decision to give that yellow card away, you know. So, look, I think, sorry to interrupt there, but it's an important point. The bench is a really key point if they're looking to get learnings from it.
And it's not just me saying it after a defeat. I mentioned it after the opening game against France. He only went to the bench, I think it was the 63rd minute when he brought on the first of the 6-2 forwards. And I was thinking, well, what's the real? Is that the best use of having that extra forward? Against Wales, they came on at 55. and we were all, talking about how massive an impact they had when the game was in the balance. So I did think that was I don't know what you thought about that. I thought he was very slow to use the bench.
In the stadium at the time, again, sitting next to Rudd, and the two of us were chatting, and we were saying the exact same things about the fact that Ireland went in 12-8 ahead. It felt like such a big psychological advantage, and I actually thought England possibly would have been broken by that because they had played all the rugby. Then to come out at half-time and score the try that Ireland did, I definitely thought they were going to be broken. But at half-time, I turned and I said, what does he wait? 50, max 55 minutes? Because even though they were ahead, now is the time to actually press down on the advantage that you have on the bench. And I always thought that was going to be a point of difference for Ireland when I looked at the quality of the two benches.
England made 4 subs before Ireland made 1.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it was. I think when they reflect on it, they'll think that was possibly something that went wrong.
It strikes me as a pre-plan. It strikes me as a pre-plan, though. Like,
it is.
It's like 100%.
I think it is pre-planned because even the fact that Josh van der Fleer came off. Josh van der Fleer was probably Ireland's best player, and he often is the one to get taken off. And look, I know lots of it is monitored by GPS and all that, but the naked eye will tell you that he was having an outstanding game. And I'm not comfortable with this whole predetermined substitutes. If a guy is playing really well, then you've got to adjust your plans. And I thought that was systematic of Ireland not tailoring their plan even during the game. Luke mentioned the kick at the start, but if you think of the try, what led to the drop goal, the second England try, Jameson Gibson Park doesn't find touch after James Lowe didn't find touch either with a long clearance kick. And there are times when you just maybe should get the ball out of touch, give your players a chance to regroup. I know we'll probably get into how they managed the end game, but a try came off a very similar incident. George Ford manages to keep the box kick in play and a counter attack again. It was so similar to the first try. Again, just not learning lessons, and I think that was really, systematic of an Irish performance that was, what would you say, 6 maybe for being generous, 7 out of 10?
6 is generous, I think. I honestly think it was very generous. I thought they tackled really badly. Like even for the Earls try, he misses him. There's a few, they're under pressure. But
Doris gets done by the footwork.
The initial Earl break as well that led to the yellow card.
But there's loads of missed tackles all the way through the game. So
Faye Waboso, every time he got the ball,
they could not tackle him.
He was
all
making
day.
breaking.
No, he's awkward.
Very slippery, very good player,
yes.
clearly, but.
You have to tackle him,
but
if you know he's got the ball, so if you're kicking that ball in, if you're really on it the week of the game and going, okay, these are a real threat to us. We're not just thinking about imposing our game plan on them. And look, good teams should be always thinking that way. We're gonna lay down a marker here. We're gonna stamp our authority on this game. We are the better team, which Ireland are clearly. I think if you gave him a bit more respect, I think you would have to say, well, if that ball stays in counter-attack, that guy is a serious threat. We manage him with 2 people all day. You gotta be in each other's pockets for that, because he's not really a passing threat. He is an offloading threat because he can win the contact. But if there's 2 of you there, you manage someone like him throughout the whole game, and you should be on high alert. And I felt like Ireland really weren't. I thought he really dominated the game. I thought he was so good any time he touched the ball, alongside Earls, whose footwork was outstanding all day, combined with that physicality and pace. Ireland didn't. Those 2 guys weren't tackled first up all day, I thought. So, look, I'm conscious I don't want to climb too hard into this Irish team. They've had a bad day out, and it still took the last kick of the game and a pretty poorly managed last 2 minutes to beat them. So it's the same thing as the kind of New Zealand game, but I think, you would be a little bit concerned about, in the big ones, what are they thinking? What's the kind of introspection like this week? And I think, by the way, if that meeting was pretty tough on the players, I think the coaching staff will need to have a real look at themselves as well, which I'm sure they have, knowing the personalities that are in there, and assess, where they impacted the game and how they prepared for it. Because to my mind, it didn't look like there was any adjustments in the middle of the game, particularly on the exit strategy, but also around kind of, lineouts and things like that, and defence. I didn't see any improvements or new thinking on what was going on there throughout the game. So, if it's not going well, and I felt for the whole game we were under pressure. You wonder what was going on in the coaching box. What were they thinking?
Were Ireland out coached?
I think you'd have to say they were. And like we should, in all of this, give massive credit to England and to Steve Borthwick, who came into the game under massive pressure. He got his team selection spot on. Luke is dead right to touch on the line out. I'm writing about it in tomorrow's paper and online, having talked to, Easterby, Byrne and Henderson today. That to me is still an issue. It was an issue at the World Cup, and I think cracks have been papered over for the reasons that Luke touched on. France had a lock sent off in the first game. That massively hindered their line out. Italy, for some reason, didn't challenge. A really poor Welsh team did cause Ireland problems, and similarly enough. But England got their team spot on by picking 3 locks, similar enough to what South Africa do. And I thought, in fairness, George Martin was outstanding alongside Mario Toje, and Ollie Chesham in the back row was brilliant as well. Yeah. He's the one who won that ball, the line out in the lead up to Peter O'Mahony's yellow card. And Luke again is spot on. It's compounding errors. So what you do after losing the line out, you tighten up. No, Ireland end up giving away the yellow card, and a minute and a half later, Ben Earl scores the try. And at that point, I'm sure it was the same watching on TV, you could feel the momentum really shifting, because even though Ireland were ahead on the scoreboard, it never felt that comfortable. And for all the reasons that we mentioned, it might have been if maybe they'd gone to the bench sooner. So I agree. I think the review was probably an ugly affair for the players, but I would imagine
the personalities
exactly.
They're top quality. Yeah. Like our coaching staff is. Like maybe South Africa could possibly have said they might have boasted a better ticket now. Obviously a bit improving now in the current one, but I think we've got, if not the best, pretty close to the best coaching staff. So you'd imagine they'll look pretty hard themselves. Everyone will be hurting from this one. Expect a reaction this week against the Scotland team that shouldn't really be able to put up, I don't think, the same kind of fight. And look, the one thing I would say is, just in terms of the Irish public and watching the game, an away Six Nations game is really, really hard to win. It's really hard to win. And we weren't very measured last week. Some of our chat,
But to defend, because obviously everyone was saying the media, what Muppets in the media, all this blah blah. But like, if England had played anywhere close to that level in the last 5 years, of course people would have been more circumspect.
It's still a home game, though.
I know,
Will.
but like,
it's hard to
England produced a performance that was, as Andy Farrell said himself, deserved victors. There was no indication. They played 2 weeks ago against Scotland and were absolutely abject. The crispness of their handling for those first 2 tries, like defenders in their faces, like hitting men perfectly in stride. I was like, where?
I have to say, I didn't see that part of it. What I did say last week was I thought if you were to see an England win, it would look like set piece and it would look like they really got amongst us there, and that they defended really well,
which they did,
and that they kicked well, and they did all those things well. What I didn't see was them scoring the tries, but I also didn't see an experienced international 10 missing all those kicks. You know what I mean? And they were easy ones, and there were ones you're kind of going, oh, like that's deflating, and that was tough for that English team to come back from at times, because they had good territory. They had, I thought they looked in the ascendancy, very much so in that first, way more in that first half than they did in the second. And I just thought, this would be now a team that doesn't have any belief, or a team that's struggling for belief. That's going to be a killer for them. So there was 2 sides to that coin. He didn't kick well, which I thought would be a prerequisite for them to even be close to Ireland.
Isn't that though naive on Ireland's part, in that, look, okay, we hadn't seen that sort of counter-attacking threat, the handling threat, but when you see the personnel that they picked, they didn't seem like they were prepared for it at all. I go back to that kicking game. I don't understand why you give these guys in. I know they've been tearing it up for Northampton, Freeman and Furbank, and they were both X and Fay both, so looks like an absolute sensation.
I think it's because they were so dire. They've been so dire in the last couple of weeks. So I just wouldn't be surprised if the Irish players, even though they can talk about how much they were prepared for it, did they actually think England were capable of delivering that sort of
But that's
performance?
naive.
I'd be surprised.
Well, if we didn't think it, and look, we're not watching half as much rugby as them, but if you could see it that plainly for the last 2 years in terms of England's attack, you'd have to think the Irish team thought they might be comfortable there. But I would have thought that was a pretty much a wake-up call at the start of the game, to think, well, actually, hang on here. We've got to be a bit more clued in.
They're here to play a bit more ball than we thought. This is the exact
point.
They're
catching it this week.
and they're running the ball.
First try, the crispness of the handling.
But they're running the ball back from deep. Okay, we got to change things here. Let's not give them an opportunity to do it. And they kept doing it. And this Ireland team are so much further down the line than this England team. And that, to me, is what's so disappointing, that they weren't able to adapt on the run.
Yeah. It really reminded me of the Ireland win that I touched on last week at the end of the 2021 Six Nations, when kind of seemingly out of nowhere, Andy Farrell's side finally clicked. Because up to that point, players have been talking about, it'll come good, we can see it in training. What the England guys have been saying in this Six Nations, we've been haven't taken the piss out of them, to be fair. And now, I wonder if, obviously, they have a tough game away to France, if they can kick on. But it reminded me, just in terms of seemingly out of nowhere.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
The only thing is, though, I will say, that game at home was way more winnable than the one against France. I can't see the French one. France are not playing well, but at home
This weekend, you mean?
yeah, can't see it. Yeah,
I wouldn't rule them
Yeah,
out.
Well, Faye also was missing as well.
Yeah.
with a
Put
big
it
loss.
out. I rule out an English win this weekend, and I didn't rule it out last weekend. I thought it would be very, very unlikely last weekend, but I don't think they'll beat France away from home. I look at home is a different. Like, I think if you've played, you know, an away fixture in the Six Nations, you'll really understand. You know, I just can't see. It's so hard to do to win.
Not in
away
the
from
Stade de
home.
France though. Like they'd obviously lost in Marseille, they drew in Lille. Like so, it's not. On the evidence of the last couple of weekends, they don't have the same maybe home advantage as they usually do in Paris.
I'd say they're missing Dupont in that, but I still think they looked. There was a bit of power on show against Wales, I think, and.
It was Wales, though. That's the only caveat.
That's
you know.
it is the
and
caveat.
if England did pitch up like they did, which it would be very difficult for England to get to that same level, and of course there is a bit of pressure off them. You know, it gives Steve Borthwick a bit more leeway because, like we've touched on there, he married up his own style because how he went after, or England went after the line out had Steve Borthwick's fingerprints all over it. Felix Jones' defence was very good, and then you had the attack as well. So it was the perfect marriage of everything, like you're saying, Will, and that's all it takes is for it to click.
Yeah, there's pressure on Galtier. They won't get any in off set piece of France, and I think France are a little bit more settled than they were at the start of the competition. I expect them to win well actually in the weekend.
So England can't even enjoy their win for a week.
No,
and
I don't think they
Ball
can.
will be back under pressure.
Well, like, it's funny. You chat to a few of the guys, and I was saying, like, you know, there's green shoots there. Definitely some stuff to build on. You can be positive about that, but yeah, you can forget next week. I don't think. I just really don't think they'll beat France. I might end up with egg in my face, but I don't think.
I think if they produce another good performance and it's a close game, I think
that's a result for them.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I don't think like if they don't, I don't think they have to win the game for it to be a good couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If they can just get out with another similarly,
I'd like to see a try or two in a difficult away game.
Because I do remember, like, you know, go back to that 2021 game. Like I remember the next time Ireland played a decent team, I was kind of like worried that it would just revert to the pre-England game when Ireland hadn't been in great form. One thing I want to ask both of you about, and I don't know, and Jameson Gibson Park obviously going onto the wing. Yeah. He did well on the wing.
Did very well.
But is there an argument that it should have been Murray going to the wing and keeping Gibson Park where he is? Like, would you have gained more from keeping Gibson Park as the fulcrum and having Conor Murray on the wing than you did by making Conor Murray the fulcrum and him struggling? And Gibson Park, to be fair, who tied up really well, you know.
I'm a strong yes on this. There's no way I'd have moved Gibson Park to the wing. No way. Now, he was decent there, but
he was.
One of Murray's best things is that he's like just a brilliant rugby player. You know what I mean? If you ask me, like, yeah, Murray's passing is nice, his kicking off the deck is nice, but I always loved that Murray was just a brilliant footballer. And like I thought him on the wing would be way more suited. He's a bigger guy too.
Would he have the pace?
I think he has enough pace. Yeah, he's enough pace, and he's smart. Like Murray's a super smart rugby player. You know, I think he'd be fine out there. I thought it was a mistake moving Gibson Park there because it left you with no. It's just a big change to Murray, and then you still have this guy on the wing who's like just a little bit loose. Like he's like similar to Murray. He's a great rugby player, but you know, I just think you have to be a bit more of a bigger athlete out there. Like unless you're like Shane Williams or Jason Robinson.
Well, he did play well. Like,
no, he was decent. He was okay. No, he made a few mistakes though. Like he lost the ball in contact at one stage. Like still, you have to be a big man. I'd rather Murray be out there than Gibson Park. I'm strong on that one, to be honest. I thought that was a mistake in the end.
I'm not sure. Like I would worry if Murray would have the pace, and we've already spoken about how electric that English back three were. Like I'm sure Murray probably did reps in training, but with the 6-2. I suppose you have to be prepared for every eventuality. And look, it was close to worst case scenario. What happened with obviously Frawley following Nash off injured. And like you touched on as well, like Ireland had very little platform to play off anyway at the base of the ruck. Now, Gibson Park might have been able to help it, but like I was looking back at the stats, only one Irish player made double-figure carries, which is just unheard of. It shows you how little ball they had. England did a proper number on not just slowing it down, but making it really like dirty and horrible ball to play off. So I'm not sure if it would have made a huge difference, if I'm being honest. And I did think Gibson Park, by and large, did very well on the wing as well. I think there were far more issues at play.
It's just would you've gained more from keeping? Like, would Murray have been a disaster on the wing to the extent that, you know, putting Gibson Park in his best position would have been?
I think Gibson Park is one of our best players, and I'd rather him touching the ball more than less. Is my.
It's kind of like when Toulouse moved Dupont a few years ago, or that was last year. Was it against Leinster?
It wasn't as bad. It didn't work out as badly.
That was a disaster. But I'm saying you're getting rid of your most kind of influential player in some ways and putting him in another position, which he maybe can play well, but is the trade-off.
I think Murray would have played well there too. I think Murray's a brilliant, like He's one of Ireland's best ever. I think he's a class player, and he's a great tackler. And he's a good reader of the game, good reader of kicks, and he's bigger for high balls and stuff like that. Didn't end up costing Ireland too much in the end, but I just think
the impetus that Gibson Park brings.
Gibson Park is in a really rich vein of form, and he's really important to Ireland, I think. And there's definitely a marked difference between him and Murray, I think, at 9, which is saying a lot. I don't want to be harsh on Murray, but I think it's fair to say that Gibson Park is a big part of what makes this Ireland team tick, And I think that, to my mind, was a mistake as well.
Yeah, what do you think about the last couple of minutes? Obviously, people have talked about it a fair bit. Ireland take the lead with, I think, they scored at 72, 73 minutes, trying the corner, missed the conversion. They ended up, holding England out, getting the ball back off a line out, they kick, and then England get a line out of the 10-metre line. Were you happy with that decision?
I was watching it back just before we came in because I was writing it as part of the piece tomorrow, and it had struck me as I was thinking about it more of the last few days that before we properly get into it, but that the English line-out that they end up scoring the drop goal from was another 4-man line-out. The last time Ireland conceded a try, I know it wasn't directly, but the Will Jordan try at the World Cup. So I'm wondering now if teams identified the 4-man line-out as something that they're able to get after Ireland at. So
I think the 4-man's to guarantee possession.
Guaranteed possession, but we should not make the defence easier because you've got more men in the defensive line.
Oh, sorry, easier to defend out there?
Yeah,
it should be easier to defend, but I think you're guaranteeing the ball is what that is.
England had 14 men because Chandler Cullingham-South went off injured and they still managed to bust him. So, look...
Soft defence.
There was lots in this. I thought from initially that James Lowe's kick should have found touch when the one that went long. Obviously, England counter-attack back. I've obviously thought that Gibson Park... Conor Murray's kick then... didn't look. I thought it was the right decision, but I just didn't think he got enough distance.
Do you think he rushed it a bit? I thought he looked like he was. He could have taken another second or two on it. Could have maybe one more phase. I actually didn't think the option was that bad either.
No, I didn't think the option was bad, and there was 2 stoppages in play. You had the Chandler Cullingham-South, which was for a minute, and the water carriers for Ireland got on. And having spoken to Simon Easterby today, messages did come down from the coach's box, so they clearly had a plan. And then a minute later, when England get their line out after the Murray box kick, Jack Conan goes down and gets a bit of treatment. So there was another little meeting as well. So anyone who thinks that Conor Murray just made that decision on a whim to box kick is just wrong. That was a group team decision. You can look at it back and you can hear Jack Crowley on the ref mic shouting to Conor Murray as well. So I think he'll be disappointed that he didn't get a better execution on the kick, but I think it was the right decision. Why would you... there was 90 seconds left on the clock, so Ireland would have had to went through phases. We know that referees want to reward positive attacking play. They would have been looking for any reason, I think, to ping them at the breakdown. So I get the logic in it, but after that decision is made, and like we were just touched on, the defence off that 4-man line out was just so poor.
Now they took a risk because they almost got the turnover.
They did.
They almost held him up, but if you're holding the guy up and he's coming forward like that, and you don't take him down, you've given up like 10 metres.
As a former left winger, can you maybe tell me what James Lowe was doing?
I can't.
Because he runs in off his wing and he's celebrating and calling for the choke tackle without fully getting involved in it, and just leaves the space on his left wing, and that's where Faye Boso makes the break down the left, down the right. Sorry, England's right. And suddenly Ireland are in trouble. And it looks like Ireland are the ones defending with a man less. That's what's so frustrating, how easily they were able to break when they had a man less. And obviously then they give away the 2 penalties. And if Marcus Smith had missed a drop goal, he was going to tap over an easy 3 in front of the post. So it goes back to your point that you made earlier, Luke. Compounding error after error, and that was seriously damaging.
And they did. It was the same thing that kind of happened for that first try too. There was different guys doing different things as well to allow him to go that far through. I think I'm not sure who was almost held up, but it was even off the set play, and actually all day at lineout. They got an awful lot of clean ball at 2, but you're kind of happy with the team getting 2, but they still got go forward off it. Kind of inexcusable, really, to let teams get that kind of momentum and win the gain line when they're getting the ball at 2. If you're getting the ball at 2, it's got to hurt you somewhere. You should be getting pretty stagnant ball off the back of that, unless you're very, very creative or there's a mistake. I thought they got that all day, so they were able to get easy ball and still get go forward. So that happened in the last phase. I thought it looked like the collision happened way too far back, and then they tried to hold them up. They almost got the job done, but when they didn't, they were in big trouble. As you say, guys celebrating, calm down. You want cool heads then, you know what I mean? Like, let the referee make his decision. Call in all you like and put some pressure on, but make sure you're doing your job. Don't be worrying about celebrating. Celebrating happens. That is going to happen on 80 minutes if you win the game.
Yeah.
So don't be worried about that. So I feel like I've seen that with him a good few times. You know, for different things, for tries that they might be being scored, but he's doing it too early. Like, you've loads of time after the try is scored to do your celebrating, you know? So I'm not surprised. I didn't spot that, but it doesn't surprise me with him. You got to keep focused and have calm heads at those times. And I think they need to think about what was happening off set play all day from line out. They were giving up really, really easy ground. And it wasn't a surprise that it happened in the last phase when it really, really mattered to them, that they gave up so much ground and couldn't recover. So again, I thought compounded errors. I think the decision to kick, as I said, because I do want to cover my own just a view on that one. I think he did rush that a little bit. I'd like to have seen him take a little bit more time. Maybe even the angle was decent, but maybe even slightly improve the angle. You know, kill another 30 seconds on the clock, maybe with another ruck. But he probably has to. If he hits the halfway line there, which he's very, very capable of doing, it's a very different picture at line out for Ireland, because you win the line out ball on the halfway. You know, you're probably getting the out half is receiving the ball probably 5 metres back from the halfway line. It's a very, very different picture. And as well, the pressure isn't on you, because once you're in kicking range, I know Elliot Daly's on the pitch, but he's missed one already, you know, from that distance. So I think the pressure is on you straight away once you know you're in kicking range. You know, when they're carrying the ball, you know, around the 40, you're kind of saying, okay, well, we've got to mind our P's and Q's here and make sure we don't give away an easy penalty. So it does kind of impact how hard you come off the line, all those kind of things. So it did impact, but again, they still are a good enough team to have held England out at that juncture, and they made lots and lots of mistakes. You know?
I think it comes down to the execution. Like, I agree with you. I don't think it's feasible in 2024 to keep the ball in your own territory. Referees are looking to give any excuse. They don't want to. No one wants to see games finished with that kind of ball retention. If they keep their discipline and defend well, it's the last play of the game. They did neither. You know, you talk about compounding errors. They had a penalty advantage on the right wing, tricky kick. Under the sticks, Tyg Byrne, the referee, whether he thinks he's entitled to it or not, the referee says 3 times. He actually gives him 2 warnings, and Byrne is still like jackling over the bottom, and then he gives it on front of the post. It's game over at that stage. Whereas if they actually hold him out there, Marcus Smith has to go back and kick a touchline penalty to win the game. Like, that's not a gimme. We saw all day out halves for kicking badly. So,
do we think our discipline has been as good? I feel like it probably hasn't needed to be as good, because I think the competition probably hasn't been as good. But do we think our discipline has been as good as Six Nations?
The stats would back that up. Their discipline,
it's not.
Yeah, their discipline has
I don't
slipped.
think it has been.
Their discipline has slipped totally.
Well, the last 2 weekends, you know, or the last 2 matches, like Wales, obviously the penalty try, you know, they conceded another yellow card at the end of the game. Like,
the yellows really hamstring you in the modern game.
And
anytime.
The Peter O'Mahony one was a complete killer. Like,
it felt like he panicked a little bit.
Yeah,
there,
because
and
it also robs you of Ryan Baird for 10 minutes. Like, you had to wait an extra 10 minutes to make that substitution. Like, that like just flopping off his feet on top of Alex Mitchell.
John for the 9 there.
Look, it was. I think he would hold his hands up as well.
I felt bad for him. Yeah.
Look, and you know, he was trying to. He had recovered the recovery tackle from the Ben Hur break, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great tackle.
It was It was a real rush of blood to the head. There was absolutely no arguments with it. But you're right. It robbed Ireland of Ryan Baird as well, and England obviously scored a minute and a half later, and that was the turning point of the game when you really felt the momentum shift back in England's favour. And like the yellow cards thing, I mean, Ireland were a team for so long who just weren't getting a yellow card. Peter O'Mahony, ironically, was the only one to get a yellow card at the World Cup. And they've been squeaky clean discipline-wise generally, but it has slipped over the last while, and that's something that came up at the press conference today as well, and I've no doubt it's going to be a big focus for him, because it has to be. I mean, you just can't be giving teams so many sloppy and easy accesses into the game.
And I think as well, like, if you look at some of the guys who seem to be committing a few of these, like, they're serious poachers, but I feel like they don't know when you want them to be operating on the line, but you'd love them to be just a little bit cuter, you know? And like, okay, you might miss out on 1 or 2 of them, but I think if you can stave off like 2 or 3 of these penalties that they seem to have kind of crept into the game, I think they're there to be saved, actually. And I think sometimes they're doing some really good work, like they're drawing in an extra attacker, or they're, you know, there's an extra second that they're kind of delaying the ruck ball to the opposition. I feel like they're not recognising when there's a good job. They don't always need to do a great job there and steal the ball. Now, in saying that, do you lose one of those crazy turnovers when you really need it, or a Van der Fleer one, or a Doris, or O'Mahony, all these guys who are great at like, do you know that big one that you need? If you don't have that, do you lose that? I'm not sure. But my sense at the moment is they're not getting the balance of that right. And I think they're going for them just a little bit too hard. I thought Doris on a couple of times, even this season for Leinster, I've noticed a few times, he's doing some brilliant work, but he's just going for that little bit too much. Sometimes I think you need to change your mindset and say, I've got to trust some other guys on the pitch here to bail us out. And I would say that's the O'Mahony one, to my mind, is that as well. I think that could happen to a number of the back rowers. It's unfortunate that it's him, and he's got the yellow at the start of the competition too, because I think the focus is on him now. But I think a few of them were trying to just do a little bit too much. I feel like he did brilliantly to get up, make the tackle, and then he actually had gone up and secured the right-hand side of that ruck really, really well. A hard thing to do to bounce back up into that position. And then he just goes to that last little bit at the 9. Like, it happens a lot. I've noticed a few of the guys doing that. So do they need to say, okay, guys, we need to know when there's a job well done here, and trust the guys that are still on their feet to make some good decisions and bail you out as well. They're well capable of doing that. So just a thought I had on it. I feel like the discipline thing is something that I'm glad it came up in the press conference, because you know, it might focus the minds a little bit there. Maybe they've been a little bit lax on that and probably haven't needed to be as good there this competition. Particularly, you think they were loose enough against Wales for large periods of that that game
After
too.
half-time,
yeah, you know, so there's no need to do that. And I think they're a better team than that. And it's been a key differentiator for Ireland for a long time. You'd hate to see them lose it.
Yeah, so the Grand Slam is gone, Six Nations still, even with the defeat, you know, the way the table is shaking out, even if Ireland were to lose at the weekend, they probably still would win the Six Nations unless there's kind of a freak result potentially in the game in Lyon. But like, how are you looking towards this weekend? And I know one of the questions in our jury this week was about whether it's a bit anticlimactic. You know, I said I think it would be a successful tournament if they win, but also a bit anticlimactic given that they were massive favourites to win a Grand Slam. But
the irony in that statement,
well, it can be both.
It would be a successful tournament if they win.
But no,
of course it is.
But also an anticlimax.
Fair.
Like that's what my point is. Like it would be
yeah.
about a success, but also anticlimactic.
Yeah.
I think it can be both. I think it was Shane Horgan on a podcast during the week who said that the title, like I'm paraphrasing, but the title doesn't really matter, which like I was very surprised to hear a former Ireland international say that. I just think as Irish people, we just can't ever get, well, maybe if you're winning it every season, but like the idea of turning your nose up at winning a Six Nations title on Paddy's weekend at home, like it just shouldn't even be, you know, entering the equation. Of course, there's going to be disappointment from not winning a Grand Slam, but if Ireland beat Scotland this weekend, there's still going to be mad celebratory scenes. It's still going to be a really special moment for
Freed
the
from
players.
Desire will be
yes, absolutely. It's already on the auto cue. But of course, like, you know, there'll always be a sense of what if, but Ireland aren't in a position to be sniffy about winning a Six Nations as a runners-up prize. You know what I mean? Back-to-back Grand Slams would have been amazing, but there's a reason why that hasn't been done before. It's bloody difficult to do. Lucas touched on it, how hard it is to win away from home. I suppose the disappointing thing is that having gone to France in week one and gotten a brilliant win in Marseille really had opened the door. You thought, like, you know, England were there for the taking, and Ireland, I think, got a bit of a reality check and a wake-up call. They had a lot of smoke blowing where the sun don't shine in the build-up to the England game, saying that they're one of the greatest teams of the Six Nations, they're the best team in the world, and I'm not saying that filtered into the players' heads, but I just don't know how you can say Ireland are the best team in the world a few months after the World Cup when they didn't win the World Cup. So
Sam Warburton was the only person I heard actually say that.
But there was kind of the narrative though, like,
yeah,
you know,
I think that's fair to say the narrative.
There was a narrative there that like one of the great, you know, Six Nations teams, and well, they are still, they haven't become a bad team, don't get me wrong, overnight, but there are still question marks. I mean, some of the issues that we've highlighted here, like the set piece, the discipline, this isn't a once-off in this game. These have been issues throughout the course of it. And because it has been a pretty poor Six Nations, you'd have to say, in terms of the standard across the board, maybe cracks were being papered all over a little bit. So I think they got a wake-up call, which is no harm. They should still go on and win the Six Nations before an unbelievably 2-test series in the summer against South Africa.
Yeah, and maybe is there a question still about, like, say the French game week one was kind of like a pool game, a South Africa pool game. This was kind of like the Grand Slam
quarter-final.
Kind of, you know.
I would say I think that was the quarter-final. But the France game was the quarter-final. They got a yellow.
There wasn't huge, like the pressure wasn't really on the opening game of the French. I
thought it was.
We were big underdogs, like, you know, we were.
Very massive underdogs.
Not massive, but like, you know, say last weekend everyone was predicting an Ireland win. Week one, very few people were predicting an Ireland win. So like the pressure stakes in that regard more so is like the game Ireland were expected to win or really pushed towards winning was at the weekend.
I thought we were all fairly because I'm pretty sure I said I thought Ireland would win the open weekend. No,
I thought everyone in our jury picked France.
No, I think I picked Ireland. I'm going to say that I think we all thought it was going to be tight over there, though. No,
not that they'd get hammered in that, but like as in.
But your point is right that when the pressure was on Ireland this weekend, they unfortunately
a different kind of pressure.
Different kind of pressure
because I feel like there was pressure on them in that. Now, it's hard to know what we got from France there. You know, obviously subsequently we've seen that they've struggled a little bit for form, but with the yellow and the red. Like, it's difficult to really quantify how well Ireland played now. They looked like they played pretty good. But there were times when France were on top of them with 14 men, you know. So, look, this was probably a different kind of pressure with all that expectation of, we should go and win this one. There was similar expectation in that New Zealand game. You know, and the other teams reacted really well and got their emotional pitch just right. I would argue we probably should have won. We probably didn't deserve to win the English game, but I think we probably should have won the New Zealand game too. And I think we should have won that game given the position we were in with 2 minutes to go. So I still think it's a pretty good team. I think I agree on the 2 Six Nations in a row. Like, pretty impressive. I don't think we should be minimising that achievement if they do go ahead and do it on Saturday, which we all expect them to do. So you go into the tournament hoping to win it. The Grand Slam, in my mind, is like a flourish on it. Do you know, that kind of way? It's not like you're in a competition.
You get the same medal.
You got to win the competition. Exactly. Yeah,
the Grand Slam is a bigger trophy. Like, you know.
Yeah, the Grand Slam is a great thing to say you've achieved, and it is a great thing to achieve it. But it's bloody difficult to do. You know, even if you have the favourite sector. Think of those England teams that never won under Clive. Like, they were brilliant under Clive Woodward. Like, they were unbelievable teams.
But those wins were the definition of anti-climaxes. Did you ever see them lifting the trophies those days? They weren't happy men. Like, that's the point I'm going to make it, is in they were seen as not the same as winning a Six Nations. They weren't hooping and hollering. They were like.
I think everyone would be disappointed. I think you're right. I know I had to go to there at the start. Yeah. But I think you're right. It'll be a little bit anticlimactic because I think the expectation from this team, from themselves and from the public, is that they would, given the competition and how well everyone was playing, everyone expected them to win all the games after they beat France away. So they'll be a little bit disappointed with that, but it shouldn't take away from the achievement of winning a Six Nations, which is the overall goal.
And it's great the fixtures fell like this, so there's like one last game to win on home soil. Like, if it had been maybe roles reverse and the last game was losing in Twickenham, it would be like.
And Scotland are there. They're there for the taking. The belief that I just think they're there for the taking this week. I think Ireland will bounce back strong. And I know I'm jumping the gun a bit, but I think this is a nice fixture for Ireland, I think.
What changes would you make for this weekend, or would you make any changes? Is there an argument to like kind of give this team a chance to go back out and kind of right the wrongs that you've been listening about, some of the mistakes they made, or would you like to freshen things up? So
the first place to start is obviously the right wing, and the latest update from the official update, I should say, from Simon Easterby today was that Calvin Nash and Cian Frawley are both on track to recover from their return to play protocols. Now, my understanding is that Cian Frawley is actually back in Leinster this week, so I would say there's slim and none chance of Cian Frawley playing this weekend. Nash was apparently involved in training today, which I have to say, I'm not a doctor, but I was surprised. That was a sickening collision that he took. Thankfully, he's all right, which is the main thing. I would still look to make a change there, I think. I would probably look to bring in Gary Ringrose, to be honest. I know it's a bit of a square peg in a round hole, but I think Ringrose could do an excellent job there, and it means that you don't necessarily have to drop Robbie Henshaw, but I think bringing Gary Ringrose back this week would make a big difference just to freshen it up. In terms of the pack, I know there's been plenty of calls maybe for Peter O'Mahony to lose his place in the team. I don't necessarily agree with that. I know Ryan Baird is putting a lot of pressure on, and I think in the summer in South Africa is where you might see the changing of the guard. But I think this week Andy Farrell will stick by him.
I think it'll be tough to take that moment away from him.
He's the Ireland captain.
Yeah. He's made a bad decision. You know what I mean?
And he had a poor game.
Yeah.
It was a poor game, but I do think last game, I think it will be very harsh.
It would be very Andy Farrell. I know he can be a real ruthless selector at times, but I don't think he would do that to Peter O'Mahony. And also, I think Peter O'Mahony is good enough to bounce back.
He's played brilliantly. Yeah, like, he's there. Yes, he's captain, but he's also been playing brilliantly for a long time. Like, I wouldn't take.
I don't think he's been at his best in the Six Nations.
No, he hasn't. But he's like,
if he wasn't the captain, I think he would be dropped.
Yeah, I think the captaincy.
I do. If he wasn't the captain,
I think the captaincy. There is an element of it protects you a little bit, and maybe that's fair. But I think he'll get another chance. But I'm not against freshening up the pack maybe in the second row. I didn't think Joe McCarthy had a great game either, one of several players. I thought he was pretty anonymous and got a bit of a lesson in terms of what it takes to make that next step up. Like I said, the 3 English locks who played were outstanding. And the line-out issues that we've mentioned, maybe be no harm to bring in an Ian Henderson into that second row just to solidify it. Other than that, I don't see him making a huge amount of changes. And even at that, Joe McCarthy might keep his place in the team, but I'd like maybe to see Ian Henderson come in, Joe McCarthy on the bench. It's whether they go 6-2 again or back to 5-3 is a big question.
They missed Ryan. I think they missed Ryan.
But people don't realise how much they actually do.
I just feel like Ryan is completely overlooked at the moment. I feel like he'd be my first lock on the sheet.
When you mentioned James Ryan, because I actually wanted to ask you this, it came into my head. Like, so obviously when we were talking about 6-2 last week, it was with what we were thinking was going to be James Ryan there. We didn't know he was injured at that stage. When James Ryan is ruled out, like, I'd rather have maybe Ryan there and no Ringrose if Ryan's fit. But if Ryan's not fit, I think I'd rather go 5-3 with Ringrose. That was my thought. Like, for me, the 6-2 is dependent on who you have in the 6, not just like any 6. Now, Henderson had a mixed performance. He made some good moments. He had a lovely little pass for the try. I think he won a penalty. He gave away a penalty as well, though. So he kind of maybe evened out in the ledger. I was thinking, because I thought the midfield, like Henshaw was struggling to get a bit of traction. I think Ringrose in that second half, I was thinking, once Ryan was ruled out, maybe there was an argument then to shift your thinking back to 5-3, because I don't just want to be 6-2 regardless of personnel.
I agree with you completely. I think I hadn't thought of that at all. I'm glad. And that's opened my eyes a little bit, and I think you're dead right. You know my view on Ryan. Said it last week in the podcast. He'd be my first lock in the sheet. I just think he's unbelievable. He's a brilliant player. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's not fitting the eye. And in fairness, McCarthy's had a really good, pretty much impossible to drop Byrne, I think. Mm-hmm. Absolutely impossible to drop Byrne. But McCarthy has a lot of momentum behind him media-wise, and his performances have been really, really brilliant as well. And it's kind of felt like he's the thing that Ireland are really missing. But, to my mind, Ryan is he's the most natural in there. I think he's been brilliant for Leinster when he's played, and he's a key guy. I agree, actually, when you say that, it makes complete sense to me. When you don't have that impact coming off the bench, I'm thinking I'd like to probably have, probably Ringrose there. Yeah.
It is a good point, but do you think, and I'll ask you the question, but do you think maybe that's another sign of maybe Ireland not being flexible enough? Like, I've kind of mentioned the game plan. Do you think they just had the idea of, we need to have the 6-2 and almost it didn't matter? Or do they see Henderson as in fairness,
it was
he is a lion, he's pretty good.
They're all good options. And to be fair, before the game, I didn't see it unfolding the way it did, in the sense that I thought Ireland would have a lot more traction in the centre. Bundyaki was really effective, Henshaw less so. So maybe I'm kind of looking at the result and saying I would have loved to have Ringrose then.
You're kind of backfilling it.
You have to. Maybe I am to a degree, but the thought did occur to me that maybe once Ryan is out, does that change the thinking on the 6-2? It's hard to know. So this weekend, for instance, with Frawley, you're saying ruled out. Then I think it makes sense to go back to 5-3. You don't have that flexibility on the bench of a Frawley who can cover all the positions. So if you're saying Ringrose goes to the wing, what are you saying? Harry Byrne and Murray are your two? That seems very light in the back line for me. I think I'd have Lammer as the number 23 who can fill a couple of positions in a pinch. And maybe start Ringrose.
It's where you miss Jimmy O'Brien badly, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't think you can do 6-2 without Frawley. Yeah, I think Frawley's kind of the
key part of that.
If they, who misses out then? Which
unless you have Crowley, I suppose. Crowley's your guy move
potentially.
I don't see them going without Jack Conan. I think he's such a reliable performer. But then it's going to be Conan or Baird if you're leaving out one of them.
Conan's a lion.
I know, but I think Baird is playing better than, or you could.
Conan's been brilliant.
So you could leave out Ian Henderson and put Baird as a second row substitute.
Yeah,
he's been playing 6.
Yeah, no,
I would do that over.
I actually would as well.
I think if they do go 5-3, I'd be surprised if the 23 isn't Stuart McCloskey though. Assuming that Gary Ringrose starts, because if you look at the way Farrell has picked that number 23 when it's a back, it's usually been one of the centres, whether it's Robbie Henshaw, Stuart McCloskey, and McCloskey has been excellent every time he's gotten to play. So and look, we haven't really spoken about the Scotland game and what they're going to bring, but to me the big difference is going to be in the power stakes, which ironically England got the better of Ireland, but when you look at Scotland, that's definitely an area where Ireland are stronger, and particularly in the pack. But if you have a guy like 5 strong forwards come off and someone like Stuart McCloskey, I think that could be really important.
Yeah, I agree. I would have McCloskey as well. I kind of forgot about him when I said Jordan Larmour, so I agree. I think when you're losing that 6-4, but you're having McCloskey, it kind of evens out in the power stakes, I think. Mm-hmm. From a Scottish perspective, obviously, we were obviously focusing on Ireland, but Scotland had a disastrous game earlier in the day. For a team that started off aspirations of going deep in the tournament. They had the bit of unluckiness with the TMO call against France, but there's nothing unlucky about that. They were 22-10 up, then they were 31-22 behind. A great day for Italy. You know, it was their first home win in the Six Nations
since the last time I played.
Yeah,
I saw your eyes light up. I knew the viewers probably can't see your eyes. I saw that was going my direction.
That was Declan Kidney's last game as Ireland coach. Like that's so long ago. Like,
he's been waiting for that all weekend.
Imagine being an Italy season ticket holder, like going for every match for 11 years or whatever.
I saw you coming around the bend there, easy. Depressing enough. I did my ACL on that one actually. Yeah, it was a lot of bad.
Peter O'Mahony on the wing. It wasn't
Peter O'Mahony on the wing.
Yeah.
I think Earlsey got a bad injury, his shoulder. He was done. I think Dricko got a yellow card for. I don't know, was he
stamping?
He had a mad kind of but I don't know if it was like a pure stamp. It was just a real reckless kind of one.
It could have been a red actually. I think
it was
today
close enough.
Yeah,
it might have been. Yeah, it was a bit of a loose one from Drick. But yeah, that was a nightmare day out at the office. I do remember I had a real. I probably can't say the names here now, but I was with a good pal, a Leinster pal on that bench watching the game, and like we were laughing. His opposite number missed, I'm gonna say, 5 or 6 tackles in that first half, and we were like, God, what do you have to do to get on here? We were having some laugh. I do remember watching it. But coming on to that one, I did the ACL after like, I'm gonna say probably 8 or 9 minutes, and then kind of felt like my leg didn't feel right, but played on for another like kind of 10 minutes, 12 minutes or something like that. And I knew I was I'm pretty sure there's something wrong here. So yeah, off tail between the legs, Italy giving us a good drilling, and sad memories there, Will. So thanks for bringing that up. That's great.
At least you can forget about it now.
You're no longer a pub quiz question, but
it was. Look, I was delighted for them. You know, I felt like even with the ball dropping off the tee, like it was just, is this going to actually happen? Yeah. But I was going to say, is this actually just going to happen for them again? But look, it's great for the competition. It's been way too long since they've had that win at home, and it'll be a big lift for the supporters there. You'd hope they'll have a big turnout, or at least a big showing, against Wales. Might be a step too far in principality for them, but
wouldn't rule it out against this
Wouldn't
Welsh
rule it
team.
out. They're not great, I just think it might be a step too far for them, but hopefully another good showing from them. Certainly capable of running it close, and I think that'd be a result for them to run close, and principality would be big because Wales would be hurting bad. That was an awful second half.
It was what was really pleased me most from like a neutral competition point of view was that they backed up the draw in France. You know, it would have been easy for them to go, licking our wounds, we should have won deflated, and that was whatever. But they actually backed it up and were excellent, and they've been pretty good. They were poor against Ireland now, to be fair, but they've been pretty good. And the transition, between the coaches has been really positive. They have a lot of really exciting young guys, and I wouldn't back them against them beating this Wales team. I haven't been impressed with them at all.
Can I ask you a question? Just an interesting one, I think. Is Italian rugby in a better position over the next couple of years than Welsh rugby, given their 20s are performing?
Yeah, well, certainly if you're looking at the 20s, the Italian 20s have been...
I'd say if you look at the two team sheets, I'd argue Italy have actually a better team than Wales now.
Oof.
I'm not even joking. Like, especially they get the parachute Louis line in, like Harlequin's winger, who go on front ball. Like their backline is good. Like Brex, the master of the pullback. Like I feel like that guy must practice his pullbacks like all day at training.
Menoncello is
Menoncello. Their back row, Canone number 8 is a young guy. He's good. Like Michel Amaro. Now their front 5 is pretty average, but so is Wales. Like I would think you even saw like Gatlin dropping George North and Nick Tompkins, like 2 of the more senior players in the team.
North will have to come back in this week, will he? Jesus,
he probably will, but he's their kind of their star player remaining, and he's not the player he was. I do think
pretty good against Ireland.
I think Italy have a better team.
You just don't want it to be like another false dawn. I feel like we've kind of been here a couple of times over the years with Italy and hoping that is this the point where they kick on, and like you have to be really realistic in terms of your expectations of what you think they're going to do. But like you just want them to be competitive, don't you, in every game? Like the idea of just rocking up in a guaranteed 5 points, which it was for a very long time, except when Luke was playing in 2013.
I'm on the ropes here, badly taking body shots. Jesus.
I was going to say, I think they really benefit now from like Benetton it's kind of like with Leinster to a degree. Like Benetton supply like 10 guys to that starting team, so they're getting to play a lot at club level. And I know they were up at the top of the league until recently during the Six Nations when all their guys have been away. But like that's going to make them better as well. Like, and it would also make them like Benetton are probably better than any of the regions now as well. Just even looking at the the way
the regions are a worry for me.
So like
they
Welsh
worry
rugby
me
is in
about
a
Welsh
bad,
rugby,
bad state. Like there's no doubt
and
about
the
it.
20s, like they beat France. They should have beaten Ireland. They hammered Scotland.
And you made the point, which I think is fair, about the front five, but the props that are coming through in Italian rugby, particularly at the 20s, like they did a serious number at the Irish scrum. So that bodes very well. You could see a couple of these guys being fast tracked into the senior setup over the next couple of years. And if you got more front five forwards to go with that backline, and the average age of that backline is very encouraging in terms of the next few years. It bodes really well.
Yeah, and as you said, there's
Quesada's had a good impact too.
Yeah,
I think having a 10 as a coach as well. There probably is a bit of a focus on playing, and you'd have to think, I think you can see some of it too.
Yeah.
Definitely been a little bit more ambitious, I think, and a bit more effective, I think, in attack. They've been effective against the only team they haven't been effective against is Ireland. They've been pretty good against everyone else.
And built on like very good foundations that were laid by Kieran Crowley. Like he did a really good job, wasn't able to quite take them to that next level.
No, died at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And the World Cup was a disaster, but Quesada has come in, and there is a lot.
Nearly always the way, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot to work on, and I think he'd probably acknowledge that as well. So it's very encouraging for Italian rugby, but also for the Six Nations. It was just brilliant scenes to see them in Rome.
It was a great weekend for the competition generally. Like,
was,
obviously from an Irish perspective, like people wanted them to win the Grand Slam, but it's much better for the competition that England did turn them over. They'd won 11.
If England are weak, you're kind of going, geez, like what's left? Do you know what I mean?
It's not good for world rugby.
No, it's absolutely no. Seriously, it's not. Because Australia are like I think they've got the right man to get them back to the top table, but they're not there yet. There's a huge rebuild in Australian rugby that has been. There's been a few false dawns here and there, but they are a long way off from being competitive, I think, and that's a worry. Like they're 10th, I think they're 10th in the world rankings at the moment.
They'd be ahead of Australia.
Yeah, for the first time ever. Yeah. I think they're 9 and maybe I think Italy are 9 and I think Australia are 10.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, from all, like, how much do we all admire, like, the great Australian teams? They were always at the forefront of the thinking, all that kind of stuff. I'm going off on a tangent, but we need England to be a great team. We need Australia to be great too. And like, England look like, there's a few positive things that are happening there now. And I actually thought the club game, like Northampton have been pretty good, Bath have been pretty good. I was thinking, okay, because at some point you have to be successful in the clubs for it to feed through. I think that's really important. You mentioned Benetton, but you look at the regions. It's important for teams. Ireland have been competitive for a long time because I believe the provincial setup is very, very good, and they're always competitive. So those things, they all feed through. It's all connected. And I'm glad to see some positivity in England's performances, and definitely Italians as well. They look good too. So.
It's funny when France weren't doing well, people kept being like, "Oh, you need a good France." Whereas when England are doing badly, I think people are just delighted, like they're loving it. Like I didn't hear a single person say, "Oh, you need a strong England." I think people were just delighted to see them do. And
plenty of Irish players go over and play in the Premiership as well, and it's not good for business when you see clubs fold. You're seeing people lose their jobs and stuff. So, rugby is still a very small global sport, when you look at the playing numbers and the amount of countries who are actually pretty good at it. So no, I think we do need a strong England.
Where does it leave Scotland heading into this weekend? That's a disaster.
They're in the same place they've been, that kind of inconsistency, inability to deliver on kind of expectation. You could argue Ireland, but to a way lesser extent, and I think I just don't know what it is with them. I don't know why I don't know where I do still think a lot of it comes from kind of ill discipline. I think if you think about the big games, kind of has let them down at key junctures. I think they can be leaky defensively. They're one of those teams that can kind of score tries. You can see that in them. But they're capable of a bad decision. They're capable of, some rash play. And they've got some guys who are not good defenders at times, like really, really shaky defensively. I think. I'm going to say the big blondie out wide is like, he's so good going forward. But I think he really kind of epitomises Scotland. There can be. They're nearly always in a big game involved in a high scoring one, and they're usually not on the right side of it. So, probably epitomised well by Finn Russell, who I think is having a brilliant tournament. By the way, he hasn't missed a kick yet. But they're just inconsistent. I believe they're in the same place they were, and I really thought they might have taken a jump this competition, but. Another false dawn, I think.
Now it looks to me like they can just really get up for England. The Calcutta Cup, they're all rivals. Like Townsend's record, against England is spectacular.
Are they 4 in a row? Yeah.
4 in a row, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 in a row, and I think he's won 6 out of 7 or 5 with one draw.
One draw,
out of
the
7.
crazy draw one.
Whereas against Ireland, I think he's lost all 8 games he's coached. His record against France, to be fair, is half decent. Against Wales, it hasn't been good until recently. I just think they're able to get up for that game. To be fair, Ireland were probably guilty of that over various periods in the past where when England came to town, Ireland were really, really good, and then against other teams they struggled to back it up. But like all of a sudden it went from what could have been a very promising Six Nations into potentially 2 out of 5 wins, which would be very disappointing again.
Yeah, like it was being talked about that it could have been a potential Grand Slam decider. I mean, you obviously think of what happened in the end game against France, and yeah, like it just seems like deja vu. And when it comes to this weekend's game, look, I still think they have the backs to cause Ireland damage, particularly if they're anyway off it. Defensively, Tui Pilato is definitely a blow in midfield, but I just think the big difference, and it has been over the last couple of years in the Six Nations at the World Cup, it was the same, is up front and in the pack. And to be fair, and I touched on this earlier, I just don't think Scotland have the depth. So you look at the quality or lack of quality that they're bringing off the bench, I think is an issue as well, which is probably why Ireland need to get the makeup of their bench right, because I know we touched on this earlier, but there is an argument to be made that because you are so much, I would say there's a distinct advantage between the packs. Maybe you double down on that by having 6 forwards on the bench. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see how Ireland go about getting that balance right. But I would agree with Luke's point from earlier. It's just so hard not to see Ireland coming back with a big response. There's so much for them to play for. They're at home. There's a Six Nations title on the line. I'd be shocked if you don't get a big response from them.
Yeah, I think it would be the most underwhelming thing of all time to lose at home to Scotland and to win the Six Nations on the same day.
And Scotland to win the Triple Crown.
Yeah, Scotland win the Triple Crown, Ireland lose and win the Six Nations, and they would also have to wait like another 4 hours until after the other game to even lift it. So it would just be the most disastrous day.
And all the journalists would have to stay around in the Aviva. So please don't make that happen.
That would be ideal.
I just really can't. I'm loath to give kind of predictions, but I really do think I can't. This is one I can't actually see. I'm going to go like you last week. I can't see Ireland losing to Scotland. Not at home. Just don't see it happening at all. I don't see anywhere where, like I agree with Cian. Their backline could cause you trouble, but I just don't think they get the platform against Ireland. And I think it's the worst thing that could have happened for them is Ireland coming off the back of a loss in Twickenham, and hurting badly. I think Ireland finished this off with a decent win on the weekend. Actually, I think they beat them well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. 2 more things before we finish up. First, Antoine Frisch being called up by the French team. Very interesting. Obviously, he hasn't been capped by Ireland, so he can go back to the country of his birth. I'm sure Munster fans aren't happy and are very worried about what happens if Fabien Galtier plays him, even for like a minute at the weekend, would really scupper potentially his long-term viability in Ireland.
It has huge ramifications, yeah. Look, I think France have been kind of sniffing around him over the last while, but since Frisch came over here, Munster gave him a 3-year deal, which is probably a year longer than most kind of contracts are these days, particularly for a new signing. But that was because he had made a commitment that he wanted to play for Ireland. So in 2022, shortly after he arrived, he obviously went on the Emerging Ireland tour where he was really good. I know like the standard of opposition were poor, but he got a chance to work with the Ireland coaches, and Simon Easterby was talking about this today. He was obviously the head coach in that tour, and he was saying how impressed he was. But look, for one reason or another, and the main reason is because the level of competition in Ireland at centre is probably the best it's ever been, you'd nearly say, in terms of the depth chart. Guys like Gary Ringrose couldn't get into the 23 last week. Stuart McCloskey, who, like we've mentioned, has been excellent. So I don't think it's an obvious thing that Andy Farrell or the IRFU or Ireland have dropped the ball by not capping him. But it does have serious ramifications if he gets capped for France. I don't think it will happen this weekend, but apparently the summer tour that France are going on to Argentina is going to be like a fringe kind of squad with the idea to build depth for the next World Cup. So I would say if Frisch goes into camp this week, which I believe he is, and impresses, then there's a good chance he'll get capped in the summer. Now what that means for Munster obviously is they've already got Alex Nankervel in the centre, who's an NIQ non-Irish qualified player. So you're going to have a similar scenario with what you had with Sean Klein and RG Snyman, whereby the IRFU aren't going to want 2 foreign players playing in the same position, which is so damaging to Munster because like you see the partnership that Nankervel and Frisch have built up this season. It's been really, really promising and actually looked like it could be really successful for them over the next few years. So if Frisch gets capped by France, it disrupts in that way. And you'd imagine Frisch will probably want to be playing his rugby in France because they operate a similar system to what Ireland do. So you
can't see me. I'm doing the moolah sign.
Yeah, it's really damaging for Munster. And I know Munster fans a lot of them are up in arms, and that I've had a few people on to me wondering like why didn't Ireland just cap him to keep him in the system? And I don't know if that's the right way to go either. Like Andy Farrell doesn't hand out cheap caps. We had this with Jack Grealish and the Irish football team. Do you actually
They definitely should have done that though.
And Declan Rice.
But like, do you know what I mean? Do you want to just cap cap lads to capture them. This was similar to the Ben Healy scenario when he went to Andy Farrell, and Andy Farrell was honest and upfront, and he said, look, you're not in our immediate plans, and then he went off and played international rugby. So I think it would be unfair if Ireland, let's say, capped him in a World Cup warm-up game but actually had no intention of using him. The other point to make, well, sorry, I know I'm rambling on, is that he's way down the depth chart in France as well. Like, you're probably talking 6th or 7th choice, and they have a couple of seriously talented centres coming through. Deporter, Gaetan, the guys who have been really good for the 20s. So if he does get capped, I don't think by France, there's no guarantee that he'll earn a rake of caps with France given what's coming through. But if he actually held on, you know, you look at the 13s that are in Ireland, obviously Henshaw and Ringrose, the clear front two. But then you're looking at Jamie Osborne. Where is he going to play? 12 or 13? Seriously talented player. And you've James Hume, who probably hasn't had his best season. So I would say that the door isn't too far away from being opened for Frisch either. So it's something that he's going to have to weigh up. But the fact that France have called him up this week would probably say that the writing's on the wall.
I think he'd be in a similar situation in both countries. I think he's a quality player. I think he's been a great addition for Munster. I think he's going to be down the depth chart either way. So I think it ultimately comes up to him, really, what he wants to do. Does he want to play in France? Because he would probably have to leave. He'd probably be leaving. Is it fair to say he'd probably be leaving Munster if he gets capped?
Most likely. He is contracted again for next season, so there's issues there. I think personally he's the kind of guy who could kick on to another level. I think we've seen it with the likes of Calvin Nash, and that if he does get into an international environment, there probably is another level in him. So look, it's really disappointing for Munster, because if they were to lose him, obviously then that hinders their recruitment and everything else. So yeah, it's messy. It's a messy situation.
They've had a rough run of it with their backs as well. Like, lots of retirements, kind of key guys, good players for them as well. It'd be a big blow for them, I think, you know. And like, tough. Like, if you'd feel for them then there, I think the hope was that this was going to be the year they'd kick on, you know. Probably hasn't been, you know, as smooth sailing on that. They just had so many injury problems, you know. So to lose someone like him, I think would be a tough blow for them. And you'd be harsh, I think, to say, no, you got to offload him because he's not actually qualified. You know, at some point you got to say, well, look, does the whole team suffer? You know, we haven't got someone obvious coming through. Of course, start to search. You know, there's no harm in that. I think the model here works, but
a bit of leeway with.
But a bit of leeway, you can't, like, you couldn't. It would be very harsh on that coaching staff and on that player group to say, no, hang on a sec, lads. You know, this is something that's changed. And I also think you're right. Not wrong. It's wrong. It'd be wrong to capture people like that. I think that's a wrong thing to do. It's someone's career and their livelihood. I do have a view on playing international rugby. I think you should be playing. There shouldn't be all this moving around and ability to move around. I just don't think that's right either. But you know, I think they've amended that to a certain extent. I think it's a pretty good thing. But I think it's a good thing for the Pacific Islands, who get absolutely robbed of all their players. But I'm not sure for the other countries it is. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough decision for him to make. I believe you're right on the situation he'd find himself in France as well. It might be quite similar. I do think, you know, generally speaking, though, you should be competing with 4 people if you're starting in one of the provinces versus 14 in France. You know, so you should be in a better position, I think, here, naturally.
And the thing about it is, Nankerville, I believe, could become Irish qualified if he does residency. Now, he's not exactly, you know, in his early 20s.
Another 4 years, do we?
But I just mean in terms of, like, no, but I mean leeway within the system, as in, he's not exactly like a test cap, like, you know, international player.
He's a project to get to that point.
I'm not necessarily saying that
that's
what's
going to
do. Because he's not a world class. Like, he doesn't play for the All Blacks, is what I mean, and he never has. So maybe there would be leeway, and it's obviously going to be on David Humphreys, who's taken over from David Nusafora, that maybe you could go, this is almost an exceptional circumstance that
one of them is working towards an Irish qualification.
But, like, I don't think it makes sense to have a centre partnership in any of the provinces, both be from overseas. Unfortunately,
nor do I. But you couldn't, like, say for example next year, like, if there's no one obvious there for Munster to take, that kind of fits the bill. It'd be very harsh to disrupt the team that badly.
It's actually, you know? There's so many strands to it, and your point is right as well. It's not an interesting one. It is an interesting one.
It's a real conundrum.
But talking about capturing someone, like, I'd say Galtier has 100. That's probably part of his reasoning.
But not this weekend. Probably in the summer tour. I can't see him.
If he plays in this week, I don't know.
He's a good player though.
He's a quality player, but I just feel like he could pick a lot of centres. He said there's a lot of centres in France that are good. Like, I feel like he's obviously seeing Ireland haven't picked him. I can bring him back in.
And I did, just to finish the point, I did ask Simon Easterby in the press conference today that if he doesn't get capped this weekend, obviously he's still eligible to play for Ireland, but will he be considered in the mix? And he basically said, for anyone who hasn't read the piece yet, he basically said that Easterby hadn't been part of any conversations with him, but that there would have to be a conversation with Munster and Farrell in terms of where they see this going. Who does Frisch actually want to play for? But he's on the record as saying that he wanted to play for Ireland. So it probably has a little bit of road left to run yet, because I don't think it's going to be finalised this weekend, but those summer tours are going to come around really quickly. Does Andy Farrell want to take him to South Africa with genuine intention of using him over the next while, or is Galtier going to cap him?
Realistically, like
too many.
2 games in South Africa is not the time to be giving him his first cap, whereas if France are doing a developmental tour, which they've done in the past and brought, like, they've rested everyone.
They need to win one of those games in the summer, I think.
In South Africa?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a nice badge to, like, if you can win in South Africa, you can do anything.
Yeah.
Okay,
just to finish up, we're going to go to our left wing moment of the week in association with Bank of Ireland. My moment, lads, is from the under-20s game last Friday night. It really kicked off what was a great weekend in style. 32-all in the wreck, England-Ireland. Lead changes galore in the last couple of minutes, and it came up to Ireland getting a try under the post to tie the game. A very nice long penalty advantage, which I enjoyed, that Ireland were the recipients of. And it sets things up really nicely on Friday evening. Unfortunately, the games don't kick off at the same time, so Ireland will have like about an hour to wait to see if they do win the under-26 Nations. But it looks like they'll probably be in the box seat, with England having to go to France. Ireland are at home to Scotland. So it could be 3 Six Nations in a row. No Grand Slam because of the draw last week, but a hat-trick of under 26 Nations would be seriously impressive before Richie Murphy goes off to Ulster. So that's my moment of the week. Keane, what was yours?
Yeah, good shout. The resilience and the character that they showed was
and the rugby they played as well. Yeah,
some cracking tries. I mean, they've been seriously good, and it's been so encouraging to see, like, once again, the level of talent that's coming through. Yeah, I give a couple of shout-outs. I thought Italy beating Scotland was an amazing thing. I didn't quite pick out one moment from that. I want to give a shout-out as well to the Ireland club side, which was brilliant to see that making a comeback after COVID. They beat Portugal over in Lisbon, and it was great.
Nice trip to Lisbon as well.
Yeah.
It's usually in Athlone or somewhere.
Yeah, they definitely did well there. But it's brilliant because that's such a big deal. I had an interview with Bobby Sheehan, Dan's younger brother, last week, and he said, like, this could be the one and only time I get to play for Ireland. So I think it's great that they get the chance to put on the green jersey. But in terms of moment, I went for, because I'm a bit of a show pony, I went for Nolan Le Garrec's outrageous pass against Wales, which was so risky and so
silly, like, wasn't it?
It's one of those passes he could easily have just turned and just thrown it normally, but he just insisted on doing
I am all for it. And I thought he was class, by the way.
And he is class.
He is class, yeah. And they've really lacked that kind of bit of spark without Dupont. And look, I know it was unnecessary, but we're in the entertainment business. You want to see stuff like this. I thought it was sensational bit of skill. So I went with that for my moment.
It's funny. There's two things. Like, if France have kind of stumbled upon, like, Miafu and Flamand back in the centres. I know they were both injured earlier in the tournament. Like Le Garrec at number 9, and then Ramos at 10 instead of Jalibert, who hasn't been playing great, and they had a new centre, Deportier from Bordeaux as well. So you kind of with 8 changes, you kind of stumbled upon maybe.
Reminded me of France of old, the amount of changes, didn't it? It was
worked this time.
And it did. And that piece of skill is real France jouet.
Galtier loved that one off the back of the line edge. Remember, he was unbelievable at it, in fairness, but he did it all in safer circumstances. Remember, if there was a ball off the line that came down on his inside, he used to just flick it out. It was class. But
as a moment like that is just
great skill,
class.
And just on, you mentioned the piece you did with Bobby Sheehan, like, I enjoyed him saying his dad got to take in the game in Lisbon on Friday night and then off to Twickenham on Saturday. So it was a nice weekend seeing both of his sons.
Great weekend.
Good man, Daddy Sheehan. He's having a jet setter. My one was the Marcus Smith drop goal. I just think England under pressure had almost blown it, really, having been in the ascendancy for large parts of the game. And he's a guy who's still a bit lost there in that system. No love for him, really. And I like him as a player, I like watching him. Not 100% convinced that he is the answer for them at 10, but he also hasn't been given a real concerted go there either. So great to see him get the drop goal. You could see how much it meant to them, and as much as it hurt us. And I never like giving those boys too much of a shout out. I think they probably deserved it, and it was they did really well over those last phases to execute, even though Ireland weren't great. It's good execution. So that's my moment of the week.
And I'm glad they ended it with that rather than like missing it and going back for a penalty in front of the post. It would have been very drab, but just to kick like.
Was it in front of the post? I think it was set to the right. I think it was on the 15.
No, they had a second one. They had a second advantage.
Oh, did they have a second?
It would have been a tap in.
So shouting at the TV at the time.
At least they got like a nice kind of, or I think it was a good way.
The second one was a handy 3 points. No chance he was going to miss it.
That was nice. Good for him.
Well, so plenty to discuss on tonight's episode. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back later in the week with another podcast reacting to the Ireland team announcement for the game against Scotland. In the meantime, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or listen on independent.ie. So until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.